Hello everyone and welcome to another TAFU talk. If this is your first time joining us, TAFU is short for Teens of Friends United Nature Conservation Organisation. Our goal is to join the common objectives of young people and to promote personal responsibility towards nature. Our guest today is Miss Sue Sayre, the founder, director and chair of Seal Research Trust. She has been kind enough to talk with us today about her organisation, Cornish Seals, and what we can do to help them. Welcome, Sue. We're very happy you could find time in your busy schedule to join us today. I'll hand it over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really fantastic. Great introduction. Thank you. I hope I can live up to it. I'm just about to share my screen. And before I start, I am literally just going to copy this into the chat because I would like you all to have this opportunity to have a link with more resources. So it's there and you will be able to share it with the presentation. And I didn't want to forget that. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you about 7 seal stories, 7 wonders of the seal world, 7 pressures of the seal world, and 7 ways you can help. This is a gorgeous white-coated seal pup. It is about a week old, and it's only going to stay with its mother for 3 weeks, but more of that later. The key thing with a seal pup is if you see it, you leave it alone and you stay miles away. So all my photographs are taken with massive zoom lenses. I have my camera here. It's a super zoom camera and it's got a 3000mm lens on it. And all my photos are taken with that. So I'm always miles away from the seals that I'm photographing. That way they don't even know that I'm there and I have no impact on them, which is what I really want. So a bit about me to start with. In 1999, I know that will be way before you were even thought of. Basically, I knew nothing about seals. And in the year 2000, I suddenly discovered them. And since then, life has progressed and people now call me an expert. For me, an expert simply means that you realise there is so much more that you don't know about your species and your topic than you do. And you have more questions than answers. But hey ho, that's just how it is. So in 2004, I met some other people around the coast and I set up Cornwall Seal Group Research Trust that is now morphed into a national charity called Seal Research Trust. In 2008, I gave up my day job because I was doing my day job and then I was coming home and doing the seals. And I realized there wasn't enough hours in the day anymore. So I stopped doing the day job and I became a full-time volunteer. And for a bit, I was self-employed running my own charity. 2015, we registered officially with the Charity Commission in the UK. 2019, I published my first authored paper, which was a big thing. 2020, we had a celebration conference. You can see all the talks from that on our YouTube channel. And where are we at now? Well, I'm hooked up in lots of things, as you will discover later. But these photographs demonstrate the range of different things that I do. The bottom left is a conference in San Francisco with some real legends of the marine mammal world. Sean Johnson is one of them. I'm not going to mention the rest of them, but they're all amazing people and I don't feel like I deserve to be sat with them, but hey ho, that's where I was. Up at the top, I'm being filmed by ITN National News, but the key thing that I do is I work with volunteers. Volunteers are utterly amazing. I'm a full-time volunteer now. I have been for since about 4 years. I've been a full-time volunteer. But much of what I've always done has been voluntary because I love what I do. So I survey seals, as you can see where I'm wearing that blue jacket in the middle. That's me at my local seal site. I don't like posing with seals. That's why the only photo of me really posing with seals is the bottom right one when I was actually doing a rescue. But the one with me in the blue jacket shows how far away I am from my seals on a routine basis. I work with seals, but mostly I work with people, getting people on side, telling people how amazing this species is so that they can love them and want to help. But as you see, I do all sorts of other stuff. If you're interested in finding out more, we have this infographic telling my story really from 2000 to what we have now, which is our story as a national charity. I always have to thank our funders. For the first year ever, we're aiming to be self-funded for our core funding for our marine rangers. And we do that by a range of donations, Wild Seal Supporter and Adoption Scheme, and also through corporate supporters and donations from people. This is currently what I do. These are all the organisations that I take our data to, right the way from a DEFRA-based Seal Network UK, through the Partnership for Action Against Wildlife Crime, for example, all the way through to the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, which is an international non-government organisation. So our data from our amazing volunteers goes to all these places, which is really quite phenomenal. But in the southwest region, which is my patch, these are the other partners we work with. We can't do stuff on our own. We have to work with other partners. I've realised in the last 2 years that I've been working probably inside an environmental bubble with people who are pretty much already won over. It's not good enough. We need to get the 2 million, the 20 million, the 2 billion people on our side. And the only way to do that is to grow the audience. And you only grow an audience by working with partners. So these are our partners across the Southwest. And our fundamental philosophy that drives everything, well, it's summed up in 3 words: sharing our seas. If you've never come across the word ecozoic, it's worth looking up, because it's an era, and it is the era of time that I hope we are now in. If I try and explain a little bit, in the past, we've used seals as resources. Then we saw seals as competition. Then we saw seals as an asset where we could earn money by taking people to look at them. And then we realised that actually we needed to potentially look after them a bit. And we were stewards for seals, thinking we had to take the responsibility to look after them. But the ecozoic is the next step. And it's where we realise that as a human species, we depend on the planetary ecosystem. We depend on seals. If there are thriving seals, there's a thriving marine ecosystem, and there are thriving fish. Without fish, seals die. So if there aren't many seals, it's because there isn't much fish. So we're beginning to appreciate that actually as a species, we rely on all the other species. We're not better than them. We're not responsible for them as such, but we're responsible for ourselves. And if we want to survive as a species, we need to look after all the other species that we coexist with. The planet does not need a plan B. The planet is a lump of rock, and it will be there until a meteor or a comet hits it. However, all the things that live on the planet need a plan B, C, D, E, F, and G, because without a thriving biodiverse marine ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem, there won't be a human species. That's what the ecozoic's all about. Okay, so on my patch, this is my patch in the southwest of the UK. If you've never been, it's awesome. And every blue dot represents a photo ID catalogue for seals, where we put photographs of all the different seals that we see so that we can identify them from their unique fur patterns in the future. You can see we've got quite a lot of catalogues, and we've even going to South Wales and then all the way to Dorset. And this map's a little bit out of date because we now go to Chichester, which is much further off the map. We had a busy year in 2021. In 2021, we did people, seals and events like we always do. We had at least 35, we've grouped some of the catalogues together, at least 35 catalogues. We had data from over 300 volunteers. We did approximately 14 surveys every single day of the year. We do boat surveys and systematic stuff. We got data from 330 locations, and we processed nearly 250,000 photos. From those photos, we got over 13,000 seal identifications, not all different seals, but multiple identifications of the same seals, for example. We had the maximum of 142 different seals in a single survey. The most important one for me is we had 7 IDs from the year 2000. So 7 seal friends that I first met in the year 2000 were still going in 2021. How cool was that? Sadly, we had 134 different entangled seals. More of that later. We had 1,487 seals disturbed seriously from the land into the sea in 282 disturbance events, which is where you can help big time, and 192 tag seals that have been helped by people. So that was positive. And then you can see down the right hand side, we had a busy time with events. 13,000 people heard about seals for the first time, and we're hoping to increase that figure year on year because, as I said, we need to grow our audience. Okay, so we're focused on grey seals particularly because we have more grey seals than harbour seals in the southwest. Did you know that they are one of the rarest seal species in the world? Incredibly, for me, this probably won't mean much to you if you don't live in Cornwall, but there are the same number of grey seals in the world as there are in our tiny county in Cornwall, and they are protected in European and UK law. However, the gobsmacking fact, and this is why I have a little picture of a red squirrel on the screen, not a grey seal. The UK's got over 1/3 of the entire world's population of grey seals, 1/3 of the entire world's population, but there are still more red squirrels in the UK than there are grey seals. And for me, I've only ever seen 1 red squirrel. I find that gobsmacking. The southwest, it's our speciality species. People come to Cornwall to see a dolphin and they go away happy because they saw a seal. Dolphins are much less predictable. Seals are reliable and predictable, so you can build a business around them, and that makes them very important for our coastal economies. So our photo ID work is based on this, the fact that every seal has a unique fur pattern. Like our fingerprint, you can tell which seal it is from its fur pattern. So if you know the pattern, you know the seal. So if you can have a look at this one, can you see any pictures? You have to use strong imagination here. Can you see any pictures in this pattern? Okay, so I'm going to tell you what this seal's called. It's got a pedigree name. It's a very silly name. But can you see a person here with their arm up looking like they're pretty strong? Okay, perhaps that way. I don't know which way around it is for you. We think this is Zeus, the god who lives in the clouds, standing on his cloud. He's got a rainbow in the sky and it is raining from that rainbow. And underneath the rain is a mermaid who is doing her recycling in the recycling bins. Okay, so if we want to find this seal, we can search for the word rainbow, strong, Zeus, cloud, mermaid, mushroom, tornado, seal, toilet, dolphin. We can search using any of those tag words and then we might find a short list of seals. Now we have shed loads of activities. They're all in that Google Drive I gave you at the start. If you want to see how good at photo ID you are, you can have a look in those activities. And there is also an entire booklet of activities. This is just one of them. The booklet was designed to approach an audience that's a little bit younger than you, but to family ages, so to adults. So the simpler activities are the first one. And then, for example, with this one, there's a follow-up with, another activity and then another activity. Okay, that's us. Right, on to seal stories. I've got 7 of them for you, okay? This is officially the first seal I ever identified back in 2000 who's still around. He's called Chairlift because you can't see it, but he's got, if you've ever been skiing and you've sat on a button lift to take you up the ski slopes, he's got a button lift or a chair lift on this side of his neck. Years across the top, months down the side, the numbers represent the number of monthly IDs and the colours represent the sites. Now, all you really need to know from this is that he's mostly seen at my site. However, he's also been seen in Southwest Wales when I think he was trying to beachmaster, but he wasn't very successful and he's given up. So I'll tell you more about beachmasters later. He was one of my first 2 seal friends, and this was the other. This is Hook. And you can see his pattern is quite different. He's never been to Wales that we know of. And all of a sudden in 2013, his visit pattern changed. And that's because I think he is an active beach master. During the pupping season, he goes and fathers seal pups, and he doesn't visit my site anymore. But I suspect what will happen is when he's stopped being a beach master, he will continue visiting my site during the pupping season. I only see him at the start of the year now, not during the late part of the year. This is a love story. Hope that's got your attention. This is two seals, this one and this one, whiteback sea and ghost. Okay, now I know this is complicated, so I'm going to keep it simple. Just look at the yellow bits. Okay, this is a pupping site. And between 2011 and 2015, whiteback sea was at this pupping site, and so was ghost. So they were chosen partners in 2011 to 2015. He was an old seal. You can see in the photo, he's an old beat up male. Probably he's the oldest seal actually that I know. So he's at least 22, 29, probably 30 plus years old. And he would come in, he couldn't beach master properly for the entire season. He would come in just before ghost, and he would look after her, protect her, mate with her. She wouldn't mate with any of the other male seals, only him. And so he fathered all her pups between 2011 and 2015, which is super cool. Then he disappeared, and we thought, oh, probably died. Then we discovered him at a weird site on the south coast, miles away from the main site. And as you can see, we've seen him since. Didn't see him in 2020 again. However, in 2021, he came back for a swan song to see his girly ghost. Look at the yellow site. And we were all excited. And then we discovered, oh no, she's not had her pup at this site this year in 2021. She had it on the south coast. Oh, so this is a love story. He came back for her and she wasn't there. So what will happen in 2022? I'm about to find out, hopefully in October. But it would be lovely if they had a swan song, wouldn't it? But I have a feeling it probably won't happen. We don't understand why she pupped on the south coast, because look, she's a world record breaking seal. She always has her pup at the same site. Why she didn't in 2021, we don't know. Maybe she got caught out in a storm and couldn't make it back in time, had a pup too early. Who knows? But either way, it was a sad end to a love story. Might not be the end. There might be a sequel. Who knows? So Ghost has her pup and shows site fidelity, having her pup at the same site every year. Waves, on the other hand, is a mum who's a rule breaker. So the books say that seals show site fidelity with their pups. Well, Waves clearly doesn't know that. We only see her during the pupping season. And as you can see, we've seen her at several different sites. And that's because she's had 4 pups at this site, 1 pup here, and then I don't know if you can see this, but another pup right the way up here. And she travels around the coast, so she's been seen a long distance apart. This was her first pup that I ever saw, and you can see an issue that I will be talking about, a pressure that this pup had to put up with while it was during its first 3 weeks on the beach. Tulip Bell, another adult female, pretty special. This is her with her pup in the Isle of Man. Now, the Isle of Man is 450 kilometres away from my site. I first met her in 2001, didn't ID her for lots of years. Maybe she was in the Isle of Man, who knows? But either way, she's now had 4 pups in the Isle of Man. She does a 900 kilometre round trip to go and do her pup. Who knew seals in Cornwall were so well travelled? So if you can tell, this is her in the Isle of Man, look, and this is her in Cornwall. You can see it's the same seal with the same pattern. So exciting. Okay, I have a video to show you now, so I hope it won't play too jerkily. But early morning on a routine survey, I saw this seal and my heart dropped into my boots, because I knew if I didn't call British Divers Marine Life Rescue, that seal would die in a short period of time. So this is me wearing a head cam, going into that beach to go and try and do a rescue with British Divers Marine Life Rescue, who I also volunteer with you. can volunteer with them when you're a little bit older. So this is us approaching the seal on the beach, which is here. I tried to separate from Dan a bit so that give her more things to think of, and I was hoping to try and block her from going into the sea, but Dan runs faster than I can, which is great. And prepare yourself for shock. Some of this is a bit gruesome and gory. Don't look if it's going to upset you. This is me inexpertly cutting the net from around her neck. Even I was gobsmacked about how bad her wound was. And if I'm honest, all I could say during the rescue was, oh my God, it stinks. It smelt so bad. And what did it smell of? Rotting flesh. It was horrible. All we could do was cut the net off, because you saw we abseiled in, so we could just cut the net off, spray it with an antiseptic and let her go. I don't know if you could tell, that's how we abbed in. I don't know if you can tell, but she was very super skinny when we let her go. So this was her on the rescue day in 2012. This is me cutting the net off. This is her 30 days later. Is it 30 days or 55? Actually, it might have been 55 days later, but either way, she had healed up completely. This was her 18 months later. And what we've discovered is seals are stunted by that net. So she had a growth spurt and went ridiculously fat and fit because she then had a growth spurt. Then in 2018, so this is when we think she's 5, first boyfriend called Fishneck, okay. Second boyfriend, a few days later, 4 days later. A few days later, boyfriend 3, boyfriend 4. And then this is her with boyfriend 5. Boyfriend 5 was a successful mate. I know who this boyfriend is. Because I've known him since he was a little pup himself. And basically he's 10 and she's 5. Those are the right ages for a first mating, and it was a successful mate. So I expected her to not have any more boyfriends. However, clearly that hormone switch to say I'm now pregnant takes a few months or weeks to kick in. So this is her messing about with a sick boyfriend. However, the next time I saw her, look, not messing about with boys, not interested in boys at all. This is her on her own. So she then commuted to an onshore site and an offshore site, backwards and forwards, and we didn't see her pup. I'm really sorry. Could you possibly pause the recording for me, because I've got somebody at my door? So this is her commuting between the sites. This is her looking pregnant, but we never found out what happened with her pup. But we got sent this underwater video, which I love, by a diver, Harry Dennis. This is a seal I know called Mushroom. And what Mushroom was doing was telling the diver to keep away from his girlie. You can see her in the background. Anyway, girls don't like being told what to do by boys in the seal world. Funny that. And she came up and explored Harry anyway. So we don't know what happened to that pup. However, the following year, look, super exciting. She had this gorgeous, look, day-old seal pup. And then the following year, look, she had another seal pup. So all because we were able to help her means that she's been able to grow up properly and have her own seal pups, which is super cool. So that's my 7 stories sorted. Who knew that seals in Cornwall were so well travelled? So far, they have been linked up to all these places. Here's the Isle of Man, Ireland, Wales, Isles of Scilly, France, and we've even had common seals from Belgium and Holland. So it's a very joined up marine world, and we need to look after the whole of the marine world in order to make sure that biodiversity thrives. Right, on to a little bit about adaptations. So this is a seal bananaing, okay? It's raising its sensitive bits out of the cold water. So when you go in the sea, I can imagine you going, oh, because it's cold. It's the same for seals. They have no blubber on their rear flippers or their noses or their fore flippers, and they have no blubber by their bottom. So when the cold water goes whoosh, you can empathise with that, can't you? They go wah and get all their sensitive bits out of the water. It's called bananaing, and it's it just shows that why disturbance is so bad, because seals will ease themselves back into the water very slowly when they've been out on land. And if we then flush them suddenly, they get all sorts of physiological responses. That booklet that I told you about at the start has got this. We have a seal skeleton, which I could tell you about in another talk. But if you want to have a go at labelling all the bones, that's one of the activities in the booklet. Okay, so seals have eyebrows. Who knew? 4 to 6 pairs. I've only ever seen one seal with 3 pairs. Oh, that's interesting. That should say 2 to 3 pairs. That's really interesting. And whiskers, they have 42 to 43 pairs of whiskers as well. Super sensitive. I have discovered in the last 12 months that these super sensitive whiskers are even more sensitive than any other mammals. So rodents are known for their sensitive whiskers. Seals' whiskers have more nerve endings than even rodents. Every whisker has 1,500 nerve endings. The whole of the palm of your hand has 2,500. So it shows that their muzzles are more sensitive than your hands, which is phenomenal. That's how they sense food. I could go on about their whiskers for ages, but I won't. Tears are good in the seal world because seals do not drink water. They get all the water they need from their food and the fish that they eat. So if they have enough hydration in their bodies to flush those big eyes clear and create a tear, it's good because it means they are well hydrated, which means they are well fed. So tears are good. They've got very similar hearing to humans, but they don't have an ear flap. Apparently, ear flaps mean that you lose lots of heat in cold water. Note to self, I need to make sure I wear that hood when I'm swimming in the sea. They have amphibious vision. So I don't know if you can see on your screen, but there is a vertical slit here. They have a vertical slit pupil, very much like a cat's, and they have a flattened cornea across the middle. And that means that they can see as well in air as they can underwater. And those two mediums have very different refractive indexes. Okay, on to sleeping. So seals can sleep on land or in the sea. This is a seal bottling in the sea. I want you to see how mobile those whiskers are. Okay, they use their muscles in their muzzle to move the whiskers around, and they can sleep here. But the reason why sleeping on land is so important to them is they can shut more of their brain down by sleeping on land than they can when they're sleeping in the sea, because they have to think about predators and water movements when they're in the sea. The other thing that I want to talk to you about is that they are capable of taking a few breaths when they're bottling, like this, floating like a bottle at the surface. They take a few breaths and then they can automatically sink in the water column. And then when the carbon dioxide level builds up in their blood, they have a rear flipper reflex that will bring them back to the surface to take a few breaths. And then they'll sink, and then they'll have their rear flipper reflex and it bring them back. So it's all automatic, which is incredible. If you want to know more about seal adaptations, there is a leaflet in that Google Drive and an activity that goes with it if you're interested. Okay, right. So seal heart rate is about 120 beats a minute, so quite fast. However, 15 seconds before they dive, they pull all the blood from their periphery into their core, this bit, and they slow their heart rate to about 4 beats a minute. And that effectively stops the circulation of blood around their body. So they don't have their oxygen just in the hemoglobin in the blood. They store their oxygen in myoglobin and have much more of it than we do in their muscles, because that's where the oxygen's needed to propel them down underwater so they can feed on the seabed. And they eat more tons of this than anything else. Sand eels, which are tiny fish, or tiny herring. Effectively, they have a hole here in their teeth that allows them to suck a mackerel-sized fish down in one. So most food that seals eat is underwater and out of sight. However, if they catch a big fish, they have to bring it to the surface to eat. And that makes them pretty unpopular with anglers and fishers. They don't help themselves and they don't help us. Right, I'm going to play the video again because I want you to look for these 3 dark marks on her back. This is Radley, who came to explore the GoPro, made my day. She's using her whiskers to explore the GoPro, and as she swims away, can you see the marks on her side? She is one of the seals I'm going to talk to you about the pressures. She spends a lot of time in the harbour because she's been hand fed, and it's led to a lifetime of habituated behaviour. So more of her later. If you want to do a food web activity, got one of those as well. It's in that Google Drive. Right. The next wonder is growth. So left-hand side, we have a day-old white-coated seal pup looking for its mother and going, whoa, where are you? And the right-hand one is a seal pup 3 weeks later. So this is how much weight they put on in 3 weeks. They start at 10 kilos and they go to 40 kilos in 3 weeks. They put on 10 kilos a week. That's over 4 bags of sugar, probably about 4 bags and a bit. So it's fast food transfer, okay? The top photo shows a skinny pup and a fat mum, and the bottom photo shows a similar situation 3 weeks later, fat pup and skinny mum. You can even see mum's hips, she's that skinny. And that's why she has to leave her pup at 3 weeks. If she doesn't leave it at 3 weeks, she will starve. She's transferred a third of her body weight to her pup, and now she has to go and feed, otherwise she will die. This is the fattest seal pup I have ever seen. It is almost as fat as this first time mum. It's massive. And you will also notice it is not white. And that's because at approximately 2 to 3 weeks old, they will lose that long white fur coat and get their sea coat, which is grey, and molt. The new grey fur grows out and pushes the old white fur off. So this is the 7th wonder, a molting seal. Seals molt every year. It's called a catastrophic molt because they lose their entire fur coat within about a 3-week period. That's why they spend more time on land during the molting season than they do the rest of the year, because they have more blood near the surface to grow that new fur, so they feel the cold much more and they get itchy and scratchy and irritable, so they spend more time on land. This is a mid-molt male. The grey is the new fur growing underneath, and the brown fur is the fur that's broken down its structure because it's old, so it's lost some of its pigment and it's gone brown. So the brown fur is old, the grey is the new stuff pushing the brown off. The orange is poo, and it's probably not even its own poo, it's probably another seal's poo that it's rolled in. But hey ho, they go in the water, so it's not a problem. Slightly less hygiene standards in the seal world, clearly, than we have. And this is a beautiful, fully molted female. So females tend to be lighter and spottier, like this one, and males tend to be darker and plainer, like this one. Okay, on to pressures. So I've got 7 of them for you, and there are some distressing photos. So have a quick look, and if you don't like it, look away for a minute. Okay. So this is a dead seal called Wide Eyes Wolf. Okay, he actually was an ex-rehab seal. And I put the photo in to show you that he's a male who we know is exactly 6 years old because he was a rehab seal. So we know how old he is precisely. We have a lot of male seals dying at an early age, and we're just doing a bit of research to see if this is to do with pollution, particularly a chemical called PCBs, which have been banned but are persistent in the marine environment and collects in top predators. And we think this is why a lot of our male seals are dying in their prime, because females get to pass all their PCBs to their pups. First pup probably dies, but after that they've got a lower PCB burden, and so they can have successful pups after that. But males never get to download their PCB burden, so they die young. That's the theory, and we're doing some research to see if it's true. This graph shows how many dead seals have been found on my patch in Cornwall since the records began in 2000. It's coincidence, isn't it? It's when I started as well. they started recording seals. They hadn't really been recording seals before that. In 2021, because the graph's a bit out of date, there were 283 dead seals. So you can see that's on the increase, which is worrying. And why? Well, 7 reasons. Probably more than 7, but I'm going through 7. Climate change, one of them. So these 2 photos, top and bottom, are taken at the same place. 2 seal pupping caves. This is the start of the pupping season in, well, kind of peak pupping actually in October. And this is a week later. So there would have been mums and pups in these caves, and then a week later this happened. So extreme weather causes more cliff collapse, faster cliff erosion and rock falls, blocking the seal pupping caves and killing everything that was in it because they're now trapped. This is not good news. One of my favourite seals, Boomers, the last time I saw her was outside these caves, and I haven't seen her since this rock collapse. So I suspect she was in there. Bycatch. Bycatch is accidental catch in an active fishing net. So it's not deliberate, it's accidental, but it happens an awful lot. It's a really big issue for us. In 2015 alone, in the bottom right, DEFRA data, the government agency said there were 310 grey seals were dead by caught around the Cornish coast in 1 year. That's a lot of seals. It's so many, DEFRA don't understand how it's so many and why we've still got seals, basically. So it's a very serious issue. This seal, it turns out at post-mortem, this seal actually possibly got wrapped up in this after it, this seal probably wasn't by-caught. It was probably entangled in lost gear because it had survived for quite a while, enough time to create a wound. So I've used this photo to illustrate that seals can get caught in operational gear, but actually this was possibly lost gear, which is my next threat. So this is a seal called Lucky Star because we managed to rescue him. But how do seals get caught up? Well, juveniles learn through play. So this is a seal playing with nets. Look, it's found a lovely mattress of trawl gear and it's just going to play with it. However, sadly, a seal panic response is to spin. And if you've got this stuff around your body and you spin, you just cocoon yourself up in it and that's it, curtains. Fortunately, this volunteer watched that seal unspin. But you know, if you've ever tried to untangle a rope or a bit of wool, you know how chancy it is that you probably can't untangle it enough to cut it. So that seal got very lucky. It's not just seals that get entangled in stuff, it's birds. They get hideous wounds like you've already seen. And we have the second, it says the highest, I'm sorry, it's incorrect. We have the second highest rate of entanglement for any phosid seal species anywhere in the world in Cornwall, and there are 18 phosid seal species. In 1 year, in 2016-17, we had 102. We've had approximately 100 different entangled seals every year. And I told you at the start, in 2021, we had 134. So this is a really serious issue, on top of bycatch, on top of climate change. And just to show you how bad this can be, and this shows how wrong I can be too, it's very unusual for an adult female to get entangled and to interact with lost gear in the water. So I don't understand how this happened. It's a seal called Legs, bless her, I love her to bits. However, this was the first photo I got of her entangled, and I wrongly thought, oh, she'll be all right. She's got no growing to do, and it's quite loose. Oh, I couldn't have been more wrong. In 3 weeks, this is what it had done. That monofilament net acts like cheese wire, and it just cut through her super strong skin all the way around her neck. And this is what she looks like now. So this is hideous. Entanglement is awful. So if you see any looped items on beaches, pick it up. If you see any plastic on a beach, pick it up. Okay, microplastics. Okay, so I've just talked very briefly about macroplastics. We all know that's an issue, but microplastics. So these are the tiny things. These squares are 5 millimeters across, okay? And these are the bits of plastics that we find in our trawls. We started by using a homemade bit of kit called baby legs. And these are the bits that we got in baby legs. But then we realized this is such a big problem, we need to get some globally standard data. and Trawl Share sent us this bit of kit to trawl behind the boat to catch microplastics. We find microplastics on every single trawl that we have done. Fibers, fragments, filaments, the whole lot. There's 7 different types of microplastics, and we found all of them. There is a solution to this though, and this is to buy a guppy bag, which is a microplastic trap bag that you put your washing in. So anything that is synthetic, that is not wool, silk or cotton or linen, should go in this microplastic trap bag, because I haven't got one here, but I wear fleeces a lot. They're made of plastic. Every time I wash my fleece, thousands of microplastics fibers will come off that fleece. I actually haven't got one to show you here, but thousands and thousands of fibers will be lost in my washing machine. And if I put my fleeces in this guppy bag, they will trap and not go out into the sea. Macroplastics, yeah, we know about macroplastics. This is a seal pup in Cornwall. This is not a great place for seal pups to be. However, all rubbish can be a threat. This is a bit of wood. Well, you'd only need a 6-inch nail in that bit of wood to know that this is a dangerous place for seals. This is waste medicines, and then you can see all the single-use plastic bottles, rubbish. Feeding seals is a big pressure. This is a fisher just chucking a load of stuff over the side of the boat, and the seals have learnt to follow these boats to get fish. These are 2 seals that are now habituated to begging from boats. You only need, it's a bit like smoking. Okay, how is it like smoking? Well, if you're trying to give up smoking and you've not had a cigarette for a few weeks, it only takes 1 to kick your brain back into that smoking addiction. And it's the same for seals. If they've managed to spend the winter in the wild, it only takes 1 feed for that addiction to being fed in a harbour to kick in. And then they stress. These 2 seals are stressed because they are looking for that next fish. They are now food obsessed, addicted to food from boats. It's bad for them. So our policy is, please practice tough love. Thank you for not feeding a seal. Why? Well, this seal is called Box Desk, and this is her begging from the back of a boat on the day she got seriously injured. So the tripper boat that she was begging off the back from reversed as she was doing this, and the propeller hit her rear end and gouged 2 bits out of the back of this seal. She did survive. I don't know how, but she did survive, but it nearly cut her tail off, and if it cut her tail off, I'm pretty sure she'd have died. We have no idea what happened to her unborn pup, however, and I suspect that that unborn pup didn't make it. But this is why feeding seals in harbours is so bad. So Radley, that seal who came to explore the GoPro with its whiskers, this is her hooked. Harbours are places where you get anglers, and seals love taking fish off anglers' lines. This seal, Radley, has been hooked 2 in a year. This is Medallion Man, and this is Trunk. These were all hooked in 1 month, these photos. This is hideous, isn't it? That's why we used her for her poster. But unfortunately, Trunk has been hooked 3 times last year in 1 year. And this year, Trunk has been hooked 2 already. And Radley's been hooked 2 already. And Medallion Man has disappeared since the start of COVID. And I think he's dead. And I think, you know, living in a harbour with diesel fumes that leads to slow organ failure means that you die young. 6, pressure. These toys. We play with these on beaches, but they're a massive risk to marine life. So this is a seal called, oh gosh, I've even forgot what her name is. Never mind. Splits. This is a seal called Splits with a ring around her neck. She will die if that's not removed. These are all the flying rings. Are you ready for this? These are all the flying rings that have been taken off 1 Cornish beach in 2 years. All of these removed from the sea and the beach in 2 years. It's shocking. This is not so much of a risk, to be fair, which is why we say if you want to play chucking frisbees on a beach or near a river, use the solid disc. Don't use the ring, because it's the ring that poses the threat. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Hopefully you saw warning graphic images, because the next photos are horrible. This is why. This is an adult female who died as a result of a flying ring. We've got to make sure she does not die in vain by making that message get out there. And if you want to help with this, I can send you another Google Drive link with all the resources you need to write to manufacturers, to write to shops, with posters that you can get put up in supermarkets, with a social media post. I've got everything you might need to action this if you wish. Okay, the final one is disturbance. And this is the one that is the good news story. It's going to sound like bad news, but it's good news because it can be solved today if we all do the right thing. Okay, so this is a pregnant female tombstoning. Now, you will have probably heard of tombstoning when you jump off a harbour straight into the sea. It can lead to broken bones and death in humans if you get it wrong. Same for seals. Smash the bottom jaw, crack a rib, kill their unborn pup. Classic. It's hideous. And when seals are high up like this, if they're really scared because you're too close, they will tombstone. It's a really big issue. In 1 year, well, you know that actually 2021 was much worse, but in 1 year, 1,105 seals, 1 in every 3 surveys, serious levels of disturbance. And we know from a report that we did in 2021 that serious level disturbance has significantly increased between 2013 and 2021, statistically significantly increased, but only in the summer. So we just need to be super careful in the summer, not just with us keeping over 100 meters away from a seal, but our dogs on leads. This is a dog biting the last seal that was slow to wake up and race off the beach. What impacts does disturbance have on seals? Well, they panic. They have a stress hormone release, they're racing heart, fast breathing, so they're now using shed loads of energy. They're at an adrenaline rush. They stampede and exert themselves. Nika will know why that's relevant. And they will have a flight response and race into the sea. So this is a juvenile tombstoning with no blubber layers to protect it. So it's going to break its bones as it bounces on that rock. And then also interrupted rest. I told you that if they race into the water, they go with cold shock. They have an energy deficit because they've used energy coming out. They're using energy to go back in. It's all a waste of energy. And in the wild, every calorie counts and can make the difference between life and death. And they're out to digest their food, and they can no longer digest their food. So they get indigestion of all things. And then injuries wise, they can rip out a claw. Even if they just race over 100 meters of sand and shingle, they graze their flippers. Broken bones, belly gashes, and ripped out claws are the impacts. Okay, to finish off then, how can you help? 7 ways, of course. You can help 1 1, 2 2s, 3 lots of 4 R's and L's and P's, and yes, I want to make sure I tell you about this photo. So basically 1 1 is watch from a distance. Get yourself some binoculars. Even old second-hand binoculars are usually better than modern cheap ones. Get them second-hand. Watch from a distance. This is our ranger Marion watching from the cliff top. This is Kate watching from a boat that's over 100 meters away. If you want to try and get signs put up, I can send you free leaflets and free signs. The leaflets are in the Google Drive. You can get a sign from us, no problem at all, for free. You just need to get the permission to get it put up somewhere. The reason I wanted to show you this is me staring at you. If I stare at you for a prolonged number of seconds, it's likely to start making you feel awkward. It's the same for seals. Why would we stop and stare at them? We need to be much more subtle than this with nature, because if something stops to stare at you, you could be a predator and you're going to get a fight or flight response. So if you want to watch wildlife well, don't stare at it. Be much more subtle and keep out of sight. Got a much better chance of watching wild behaviour. Right, there are 2 2s. Never feed. Practice tough love, please, for all the reasons I've said. And this beautiful seal pup we started with, never try and put it back in the sea. It should be on land with its mother. If you put it back in the sea, not only will you cover it with your scent and its mother will no longer feed it, but we can't rescue it if it's in trouble in the sea. It needs to be on land. So never, ever put a seal pup back in the sea. Never try and encourage it back into the sea. Leave it on the land. Call British Divers Marine Life Rescue 01825 765546. I'll put it in the chat. Okay, 4 R's, 4 L's and 4 P's. So plastics. Talked about plastics, why they're an issue. We need to reduce, reuse, recycle and redesign. We need a circular economy where every bit of plastic is reused and made into something different. This is a seal called Rupert biting a disinfectant bottle. That's really horrible. And then don't forget about these, okay? Plastic flying rings. Please make sure you use a solid disc and never use a flying ring anywhere near water, because it'll go into the river, it'll end up in the sea, and then it'll be a risk. Fish. If you're eating fish, please buy local, low rated. So there's a good seafood guide on the Marine Conservation Seal Society website, Marine Conservation Society website. Look it up. Find out which fish are the best ones to eat. I actually don't eat fish because I think I should leave it for the marine creatures to eat. I don't need to eat fish, they do. Or line caught fish. Don't eat fish that's been caught in a net for all those entanglement and bycatch reasons. We had 6 seals dead bycaught in a single inshore sustainable, really, fishery. And we had 38 dead bycaught seals in a single trawl net offshore. So line caught fish and lobster pot shellfish, they're the best kinds of fisheries. And then PPPP, in your toilet, only ever put pee, poo, paper, preferably recycled toilet paper, and plant-based cleaners. I got to the age of 56 before I realised that that bleach I was chucking down my toilet was entering the sea, going with my seals. I now use a company called BioD, which uses plant-based cleaners. They're much more kind to the environment. And the reason I didn't put the photo up, look, is because I knew it would distract you. It's a seal having a wee. Okay, there are lots more threats in that activity booklet. How do we fund our work? Well, we have an online shop if you're interested. We've just got for this month a fundraiser, a Jumblebee. If you've ever been on Jumblebee, it's an auction site where you can get a nice little purse or some reusable gift bags or some lovely prints, all sorts of things. The link's there. If you're interested in finding out more, I'm just about to run my second field studies counselling course called Discovering Seals. It's a 4-week course and it's about to go live. So if you're interested in that, you need to do it quick. Follow-up activities. Okay, so when I've done this talk for other people, I get stuff back, which I love. Okay, so this is a leaflet that was designed by a 14-year-old, okay, for a 14-year-old audience with key messages. This is the outside of it, and she did an even more beautiful inside. So that was by Maya. Isaac did some volunteering for his Duke of Edinburgh Award, remote volunteering for his Duke of Edinburgh Award, and he also designed a leaflet, but he decided he was so inspired that seals could swim 100 kilometres in a single day, he would try and cycle 100 kilometres in a day. Well, even an experienced cyclist will tell you that's a long way. So he teamed up with some experts who were good cyclists. He'd never really cycled before. He got a decent bike off them and borrowed it, and then he smashed it. He raised over £500, nearly 600 quid by cycling 100 kilometres in a day. If you do a fundraiser for us, tell us you're going to do it though, because then we'll share and spread the word. And then, do you want a seal ambassador certificate from us? This is Zach, who's under 14, who's gone and done a beach clean, which I know is the sort of thing that got TAFU started. So, you know, go and do a clean up and tell us you've done it, send us a photo and you'll get an ambassador certificate. And why do we need to do all this? Well, this is a plastic carrier bag that the seal was playing with. And unfortunately, it stuck its head through the handle and then panicked. These two seals are going, what on earth are you doing? That's rubbish. See what I did there? And unfortunately, people seem to think the sea is their bin. This wheelie bin was found next to a seal pup. And the sad thing is, this seal pup thinks this bin is its mother. They like lying next to their mother. All a bit sad. These are our seals, our patch, our watch. This is not good enough. So this is why we need to take action. And I have finished. You will be pleased to know.
Well, thank you very much. That was amazing. I don't even think I've got many questions.
Well, that's absolutely fine. I'm happy to do questions, of course. And the other thing is, if people want to email us and ask us questions, it's seals@cornwallsealgroup.co.uk.
Perfect. One question I did have is, when did you meet your first seal?
Oh, so that was in the year 2000 when I got started. So it's a very good question. And basically, I was out climbing with my partner and I was bored because I was belaying and he was taking ages to get up the climb, and it was a coastal climb. And I looked out to sea. I should have been concentrating on belaying. I looked out to sea and I could see this seal in the water. And it's like, oh, wow. And then I watched the seal climb out on a rock, and I didn't know seals came out of the water. At which point I went, coincidentally, a couple of days later, went to my favourite heaven on earth beach, and I saw 3 seals popping their heads up. And I thought, is this 3 seals or 1 seal playing a game with me? And then the same week, serendipity played a lot in this. The same week, there was an article in the newspaper and it said, anyone interested in seals, get in touch. I was the only person who got in touch. But that person who I met, Stephen Westcott, told me a sentence that changed my life, which is every seal has a unique fur pattern. And at that point, I could now tell if it was 3 or 1 seals. And I started to fall in love with seal patterns. And the rest is history.
Wow. Sounds like lots of fun. I wanted to ask, when I saw a seal, I sent you the picture actually.
You did?
There was lots of seals, but there was a black one. Are they usually black, or are there some black?
So males tend to be darker and plainer, and their contrast between the light and the dark patterns gets less as they get older. So they get plainer and darker as they get older, makes ID quite hard. Whereas females are light and spotty, especially on their bellies, and their contrast increases over time, so their patterns get clearer. Having said that, I still maintain that it's easier to ID a male, because that female I showed you, Zeus with the rainbow and the mermaid, blah, 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 has so many patterns you don't know which to look at, whereas a male might only have 1 pattern here, and that's easy to remember. You know which bit to look at and you know which seal it could be.
Yeah.
So plainer and darker males, lighter and spotty bellied females.
Wow. So does that mean could you identify a seal from just the head, for a picture of a head in the water or not?
Yes, we can, as long as we can see a bit of pattern. Some of our sites, we only get photos of seals in the water, and those people are very good at just doing the head pattern because they focus on this bit or this bit or this bit. Whereas my site, the seals come out of the water, so I still focus on these bits to start with, but I look at these bits and these bits as well. So yeah, it depends what kind of site it is. And yes, if you've got some photos of seals around the southwest and you want us to have a look at them, we need a date, a location and the photo, and we do try and send stuff back to you to give you feedback. If you've got information about and photos, as Nika has, then you can send it to sightings@cornwallsealgroup.co.uk.
Something else, what was it? Oh yeah, you mentioned that they climb up cliffs and then jump down.
Yes,
climb up the cliff?
That's a very good question. I'm glad you thought of that. They don't climb. Well, actually, they're surprisingly good at climbing out of the water because sometimes the rocks are like this and they're covered in slippery seaweed. So what they do is they stay in the water for a bit and suss out what the waves are doing. And then they use the wave to wash them up. And then they cling really tightly with their whole body for friction. They cling really tightly to anything they can get hold of with their big strong claws, and they hope that the wave doesn't suck them back. And then when the next wave hits, they use the buoyancy of the wave to push them up again, and then they repeat until they're out. So they can climb up surprisingly, like a metre high vertical. They can actually climb up that. If they can reach it, they can climb up it and pull themselves up. Their shoulders are very strong. However, those tombstone photos, the seals came out on the rocks at high tide.
Yeah.
And then the tide dropped. And we have a big tide drop in Cornwall, 7 metres sometimes. So by the time it's low tide, they are way above the water and at serious risk. So they will have come out and floated out with the high tide, and ideally they will stay there until they get floated off by the same next high tide. But if they get disturbed, then they'll come off sooner, and that's when they're at risk.
How often do they need to feed?
Did you say how often do they need to feed? Yeah. Okay, good question too. Gosh, great questions. Well done. They need to feed. Well, the books say, and the satellite tags that other people have done suggest that they feed for 4 days, and then they have to rest and digest for 1 day. So they can't digest their food while they're catching it because they're underwater, and digestion requires oxygen. So they have to come out into air, bottling or on the land preferably, to digest that food. I honestly, I mean, I only know that from research, and sometimes the research can be a bit misleading. So I'm not 100% sure that's correct. Sometimes seals will stay on land for much longer than a day, especially if they're molting. So they will feed less when they're molting, and they spend a lot of time on land when they're pupping. So a mum who's feeding her pup for 3 weeks will fast. She won't feed. Unless when she goes in the water as a fish happens to pass her nose, in which case, of course, she would go for it. And likewise, beach masters. I didn't talk to you about beach masters, did I? Likewise, beach masters will fast as well, sometimes for up to 3 months. So if they're going to protect their females. So beach masters are dominant males. The reason I thought I was going to talk about it, I do apologise, it's a key part of another one of my talks, but beach masters are the dominant males. So whiteback sea in that love story, he's a beach master because he will come out onto a beach and protect all the females that are having pups on that beach from other males, in the hope that when they are ready to mate at 3 weeks, when they wean their pups, that he will be the lucky one. But Seal Society is ruled by girlies, and if she didn't like him, she'll go off and mate with a sneaky male who's offshore. Who knew?
Wow.
We could learn a lot from seals.
So do other males try to hurt the females and pups that are being
they won't try to hurt them, because a female will never mate with a male that's hurt her in the past. You know, if she doesn't like him, she won't mate with him. If he's annoyed her and messed about with her and even worse hurt her, she definitely won't mate with him. And I've actually seen females get very aggressive with males who have presumably upset them in the past. Other males will come in and try and challenge the male, the beach master. So they wannabe beach masters will challenge the beach master. And sometimes in Cornwall, we don't have nasty, horrid fights, but in places where there are hundreds of seal mums ready to mate, the fights can be very aggressive. So the male is a threat to the beach master, but not a threat to the female. No male will mess with a pregnant pupping female. Females rule Seal Society.
That's good to know, I suppose. How can you tell the age of a seal?
Another very good question. So it's hard, and unless you've got a definitive birth date and tracked it through to adulthood, you can't tell exactly. However, in year 1, seals are short and usually quite thin. In year 2, it's a complicated story, but they go golden brown for about 6 to 12 months to do with their long first molt, and it's a long story. So that's how they're a little bit longer, and you can tell they're likely to be 2. 3-year-old is starting to look quite sleek and reasonably long. And at the age of 4 and 5, they go and put on a lot of weight. And fat is fit with a seal, so it's really good to be fat in the seal world. And they're 4 or 5 adolescents, and you can tell from their behavior that they've got hormones racing for the first time as an adolescent. And girls do crazy girl behavior and flirt and chuck themselves at other seals saying, "I'm me, look, mate with me." And boys do stupid prone howling behavior that goes, "Look at me, I'm super big." They stretch their necks out to make them look longer. "I'm super big and super strong. Look at me, I'm a really," I saw one doing this in the water, splashing. "I'm super strong." They do body slapping on the beach to show how powerful they are. So adolescence is a very strange time for seals. And then after the age of 7, they have stopped getting longer. So you tell the age by the length. And after 7, they don't get any longer, which is why you can't really age a seal after 7. However, if they were 7 when you first photo ID'd them because they were an adult, you know they are a minimum of whatever length of time you've ID'd them for plus 7. If you saw them at the age of 3 and you've identified them for 10 years, then you know they're 13. So that's how we age a seal.
Makes sense. And how old can they get?
Well, I don't know, but the books say, and the books are wrong about lots of things, the books say that a female will live to an average of 30 and a male will live an average of 25. So like male humans, they tend to die a bit younger than females. Apparently it's to do with testosterone. Not good for you and not good for your heart. And actually, because we don't have so much testosterone, that's why you know, females' hearts tend to be healthier than male hearts as a general rule. However, you know that life expectancy for humans doesn't mean anything, because, you know, if average life expectancy, what is it for humans? Something like 80 something now. If average life expectancy is 80, it doesn't mean you're going to make it to 80. It means some people still die at 12, sadly, or less, and other people will die at 103. So it really doesn't mean anything. And the other thing is, I've been doing this now for 22 years. I know that chairlift and hook are 25, which is the average for male life expectancy. So it's going to be really interesting to see how long I keep identifying them for, to see how old they are. So I feel like I'm just starting to be able to get our evidence of how old seals live. Find out if the books are right or not. We have, as I said, we've got a lot of males dying at 6, 7, 8, up to 15. So, you know, it's a bit of a worry.
Yeah. Had a question, but then I lost it so much.
That's okay. I was going to say that last question that you asked is usually the first question I get asked. And I deliberately don't tell people how old seals live for, so that they have an obvious question to ask. But you've gone for the really challenging questions first, which is really impressive. And I like learning something new when I answer questions. So well done.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I want to ask, what are the eyebrows for? I mean, they must have a reason.
Good question. Whiskers are for finding fish, and they use these. They can tell a fish, even if it's like 100 meters ahead and 2 minutes ahead of the seal, they can still detect the vibrations in the water, which is ridiculous. They also have 2 hairs, one on either side here, called rhinal vibrissae, and obviously these. And I think the eyebrows and the rhinal vibrissae, these is like the general focus of where the fish is, and these tell the seal exactly what the dimensions of the fish are, and therefore what kind of fish it is likely to be, and therefore whether it's worth chasing and then catching. And there's a brand new bit of research out, so this is new to me in the last 12 months as well. These also, if you're catching little fish, stop little fish from escaping when you're catching them. Because if they're here and you suck and they swim sideways to try and escape, they can't.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, nature, seriously, nature's design is absolutely phenomenal. I'm a believer in evolution, but how nature evolved to be so complex and so clever. I mean, a seal whisker is a helix shape. So they're not flat, they're rounded cross section, and you can feel the spiral on them. Why? Well, to spiral water off the whisker so that it doesn't get too much drag when it's swimming through the water. And humans are now starting to use that design for wind turbines to cut down drag against the blades of the wind turbines. There is so much we can learn from natural design. That's another reason why we need to respect and protect nature.
Yeah, like solar panels as well come from plants.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
In fact, you know what? I didn't know that. I should have known that. So solar panels are designed on photosynthesis, are they?
I thought so. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I'm not questioning it at all. I just didn't know that. There's loads of stuff I don't know. And that's one of them.
Oh yeah. Do you actually put any trackers on seals? Like, can you?
So we don't, and we never have. And the reason we haven't is because the French have done it, the Welsh have done it, the Irish have done it, and they all come through our waters. So before we were going to do it, we'd need to do a literature review for all that data that already exists and is out there. The satellite tags that go on the back of the seals do record very fine scale data, but they fall off when the seal molts. Thank goodness they fall off when the seal molts. So you only get 6 to 8 months worth of data anyway from a satellite tag, but it tells you where seals feed. Cameras would also tell us what they eat, which is obviously key information. However, we had one satellite tag seal that was satellite tagged by the Sea Mammal Research Unit in North Wales. And she was tagged at 3 weeks. She stayed on the beach for another week, so she was now 4 weeks. And then she swam to Southeast Island, past the Scillies, into French waters before coming back to the Isles of Scilly. And then, no, she didn't come back to the Isles of Scilly, she came back to the south coast of Cornwall. And in 8 weeks, she had swum 1,000 kilometres. So we learned really interesting stuff from her. As you know, she swam a very long way. She'd routinely dive to 120 metres, which is where their favourite food can be if it's deep sea. They dive shallower if the seabed is shallower. But the satellite tag, she'd moved when the satellite tag was glued on her with araldite, so it had stuck to her skin. Seals telescope their necks. I can't do it with my arm because I haven't got to, I suppose I could telescope my arm to catch the fish. And if you've got something stuck on the telescope bit, you can't telescope your neck to catch. And if it's stuck to your skin, the chances are it's going to cause a lesion or a wound. And this satellite tag seal's satellite tag had to be surgically removed with a very nasty infected wound. So as a result of that, we've just thought it's, you know, we can't justify at the moment satellite tagging seals. However, there is very useful research out there about foraging areas and prey that requires satellite tagging. So if you're going to satellite tag a seal, you just need to make sure that your research is new and not replicating findings that other people have already done, because you're going to put seals at risk to repeat data, which is not necessary.
Yeah. How far can a seal go? Like, can it reach the Mediterranean and still be okay?
I'm very glad that we're having this conversation now, because 3 months ago, there was a seal released in southern France, not on the Mediterranean coast, but on that west coast of France, in a place called Biarritz. And it made its way to Cornwall. That's 850 kilometres, and it did the journey in 12 weeks.
Wow.
So the satellite tag data shows that a seal can swim 100 kilometres in a day. Their average swim speed is 25 kilometres an hour, 100 kilometres in a day, and we've definitely photo ID'd a seal doing 300 kilometres in 3 days. So, you know, they can swim ridiculous distances if they need to. The question is, why do they need to? And I don't really know the answer, but my feeling is that seals who find really good places, they have to rotate their feeding sites, because if you keep feeding from fish at the same place, you're going to run out of food eventually. So they rotate their feeding sites seasonally. And if you, in your first swim around the sea, don't find food and don't find food and don't find food and don't find food, you keep going until you find food. And then you've swum a long way. And that then becomes one of your sites. So you're going to have a big range, like maybe Tulip Bell or this seal from Bay Ritz. Whereas if you find fish quickly, then you eat. That becomes one of your sites. Then there's a great site, and you have a small range then if you're lucky and find fish quickly. So I think that's what controls why some seals swim a very long way and other seals don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's some. Can all male seals breed? Like,
very observant. So most males in the seal world are non-breeding. They don't have beachmaster instincts, or like chairlift, they try and don't ever make it. So they just have an idyllic lifestyle, because what do? They sleep, they eat, they swim, they digest while they're sleeping, and then they eat, and then they swim, and that's all they do. I have a sneaking suspicion they might do a little bit more than that. And I think one of the main roles for non-breeding males is to teach juveniles how to become a seal through show and tell. So I personally, I have no proof of this. It's not science, it's speculation. But I have a theory, and the theory is that non-breeding adult males teach juveniles how to be seals. Whereas, so you only get a few seals that are very special, got an X factor to do the beachmaster thing, who mate with the females. Whereas every female will have a pup, can have a pup every year. Mm-hmm. And there's no menopause, so they can have pups until they die. Oh. However, common sense tells you that if they've lost a third of their body weight and they're not fat and fit, they will reabsorb any pregnancy that they've got, and they won't have a pup the following year. And we know that climate change is having an impact on pupping, because in 1 year, Storm Brian 2017 washed pretty much every seal out of the Isles of Scilly and doomed them to die because they were washed away from their mothers. In the following year, 2018, we had a 46% drop in pup numbers. And we think that's because the mums didn't feed their pups. They had health complications. Their hormones were out of sync, so they didn't mate with the males, so they didn't get pregnant. So we had a drop in pups in 2018. However, by 2019, we were back up to normal. So we think the extreme weather events associated with climate change actually do impact our seals. And I was interviewed by the BBC Natural History Unit about exactly that fairly recently. So we might even be, we might not be, because they've got lots of stories. We might even be on Planet Earth 3 with that story.
Wow. Who
knows? Heard it here first.
What determines if a male can breed or not? Or is it just if he manages to become?
So they have this X factor that I said. In another talk I've got, I show you beachmasters. That's why I got muddled. But basically, they are not the biggest seals, so they're not the strongest seals. My guess, and I have to anthropomorphize in order to be able to begin to understand this, but I can see a seal who's a beachmaster make eye contact with an ex-beachmaster who's obviously got or had all that X factor stuff, and scare him off the beach from 100 meters away. So it's to do with personality, and I think it's about, you have to be, well, and maybe skills, personality and skills. If you're going to cope as a beachmaster and not get ousted, you've got to be very adaptable. So you have to learn quick. So I think you have to be intelligent in order to adapt quick and cope with whatever circumstances are thrown at you on your seal beach with your females. Your females will just give you grief for the entire time. So you have to be patient, persistent, resilient, and not get offended when a female has a go at you. All of those things. And then when we lost our first established beachmaster on my site, I realized what we were missing. That beachmaster had fantastic leadership skills, because the rest of the seals, they all knew who was boss. There was no power vacuum at all. They all knew who was boss and they never messed with him. So it was settled and calm and quiet and everyone was chilled. As soon as he got ousted by this other beach master 100 meters away, it was chaos. We had seals being bitten because there were wannabe beach masters all bowing, all begging to be beach master in that power vacuum, and it was just hideous for a few years. And then until you get a good beach master again who's a good leader. So those are the kind of skills that I think make a beach master strong. But I think the pecking order is set up as a juvenile. So juvenile males will spar with each other all the time. They'll spar with females as well because they need to learn how to interact with females. But you will very, very rarely see a female playing with another female because there's no biological reason for that. So they'll spar, these juvenile males will spar as a juvenile, and I think they develop a pecking order that they remember when they're older. So if they get a nasty nip when they were a juvenile, they don't mess with that male when it's older. And if you're a male who ends up nipping lots of juveniles, perhaps that's how you get to be beach master, because they've all learned to not mess with you. I don't know. I'm not a seal. And that's the other thing about an ecozoic era. The other aspect of ecozoic is that whilst as a high level mammal I can anthropomorphize about what the motives are behind high level mammals' behavior, I can never be a seal. So I can never understand what it's like to be a seal. I can never fully appreciate all those incredible skills and understanding of how the sea works, the waves work, the tides work, pressure, air pressure works. I will never understand all of that. So the ecozoic shows me that whilst I can understand a lot, I will never know what it's like to be seal. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can only guess.
Yeah. I don't think I have any more questions.
Do you know what? Those are some of the best questions I've ever been asked. So well done. You're amazing. Can't believe how good you are. Really, really fantastic questions. Well done.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's always lovely to be asked interesting questions because it shows how well your audience listened and how into what you've said your audience is. So thank you for that. I do really appreciate it.
So yeah, well, thank you very much, Sue, then, for taking the time to talk and join us. It was really amazing to learn more about seals and how they live in Cornwall and what you guys are doing to help them, and most importantly, what we can do to help them.
Yeah.
Thank you all for watching, and I hope that you will learn from this video how important seals are and that we all have to be more responsible towards them in our everyday lives, as well as when watching seals. And always keep a safe distance. And yeah, see you all next time. Thank you. Bye.
Lovely to meet you.